Christine, if you want to go through the sediment and any apologies.
Yep, thanks, Chair. So we have Councillor Douglas Reid.
Yep.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Here, Christine.
Councillor John McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Tom Cook.
Yeah.
I have an apology from Councillor Linton. Councillor Fiona Campbell. No, check back. Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Claire Leach.
Yes.
Councillor Neil McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Jim Roberts. Councillor Roberts. He's there, I can see him yet. Councillor Roberts, can you hear us okay? In the dark. Right, I know you're there. Councillor Jackie Todd.
Here, Christine, thank you.
Thanks. Can I just check, is Councillor Fiona Campbell on the call?
Yeah, yes, here, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, next item's declaration of interest. Don't think there's anything immediate that springs to mind that we should be declaring. And okay, and now go to a suite of papers. As the press are speculating about houses, we're about talking about houses today, and a lot of housing folk here this morning in the council chamber. Go through a number of papers. It's today quite a big agenda, so we'll just start off with item 2, and that's the Housing Asset Management Framework Progress Report. Blair.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. Members, the purpose of the report today is to provide you that annual update on our housing asset management framework activities and what is our 5th annual review of our housing assets in this way. Members, our recommendations are as noted at paragraph 2 of the report, and from paragraphs 3 to 6 I highlight the background of the housing asset management framework and its key objectives. Members, from paragraph 7 note that our housing asset management framework matrix was approved in February 2016. This agreed matrix was developed utilising the guidance from the Scottish Housing Regulator's recommended practice on strategic asset management, and it assesses our housing stock in terms of overall performance from a housing management perspective. Members will recall that our approach and matrix identifies our stock into 3 categories: red, amber and green. This information is then considered by a cross-service review team, and stock is categorised with potential solutions, some of which are housing management actions for improvement, disposals, demolition, and demolition to refresh via our SHIP programme and also via our HIP programme. Members will note an update on progress of acquisitions and disposals at paragraph 12 of my report, and members will also recall that I provide this as part of our quarterly update to members. Members, moving to Table 1. Table 1 highlights our lettable stock using the green, amber and red status as set out before you, and I would like to draw members' attentions to the significant reduction in red properties from 2016, where we had 680 properties identifying as cause for concern, which is reduced to 248 in 2021. Clearly, members, the housing asset management framework approach is just one of many ways in which we can improve the performance of our stock and our services, and we've introduced a number of service improvements which are as noted from paragraph 17 of the report, and members, I'll pick out some highlights from those positive improvements. Members, we've seen void rent loss reduce from £1.3 million in 2016-17 to just over 800,000 in 2021. Members, we've seen a significant rise in tenancy sustainability, which was a fundamental reason for implementing our HAMF in the first place, from 79% in 2016 to over 85% in 2021. Members, where we have made a recommendation to demolish a site and to refresh via our SHIP programme, we've been able to develop 233 homes over that same period. Just recycling our council assets and adding value to our communities. Members, from Table 2 of the report, it highlights our 3 housing management areas and the breakdown of red properties against those areas. The table reflects the position of the highest percentage of our reds being within both Cumnock and Doon Valley area, Irvine Valley Ballochmyle, which equals 77% of all of our reds are in these communities. Members will note that this has been a consistent position since the implementation of our Housing Asset Management Framework, albeit now members with significantly reduced numbers. Members from paragraphs 20 and 21, you'll note that consultation and engagement has been fundamental to our successes of the programme over the past 5 years, and we fully engaged with our tenants and residents, our community groups, the Federation, and indeed elected members through briefings and information events. We, of course, members had our briefing sessions just last week. So, members, I would also like to confirm that those tenants and residents who may be impacted by the recommendations we make this morning have already been contacted personally by our team, and we already are looking to identify solutions for those people, and we will continue to do so. Members, at paragraph 22, we reference the appendices of the report, and I will go through these in some more detail in terms of the recommendations that we brought forward this year. Robert, I'm just going to share some slides, members. Members, I'll start off from Appendix 1, which is Cumnock and Doon Valley. And members, this year you will see that there are actually no recommendations in terms of this year's report. What you will see, members, before you is addresses at Garpal Avenue and Pagan Walk, whereby in previous years members of Cabinet agreed for the demolition of these blocks. And through positive housing management actions, we've been able to sustain these blocks. And we are now recommending, members, that we remove these from that decision and we retain this stock because it's now having a positive impact on our housing stock. So a really good news story there. Members, for Kilmarnock, Central and North, we make no recommendations this year, which were the first ever in the last 5 years that we've not made any recommendations. Moving forward to Irvine Valley Ballochmyle. Members, you'll note that at Campbell Street in New Milnes, previous decisions by Cabinet to demolish the 4 blocks of 4 in the blocks at the top of Campbell Street. We have had some difficulty. We've relocated all of our tenants thus far, but we have had one owner who we've had some difficulty in being able to acquire their home. That has actually progressed. However, members, given the difficulties, we would like to propose that if that doesn't come to fruition, that acquisition, that we demolish the 3 blocks and we look to dispose of the block where the owner remains, as we've got no legal powers to get this property back through CPO. Members, for West Church Street and High Street in New Milnes, again, previously we had approval from Cabinet to demolish and clear that site. However, we have 2 owners that again are not engaging with us to buy back their homes, and as such we would now to be looking to dispose of our own interest in that block because again we have no legal powers of CPO. Moving forward to Darval, East Main Street, again members will recall that we've received previous approval to demolish the blocks at 85 and 87 East Main Street and 1 Kirkland Road. However, members, over the past 2 years, we've seen significant deterioration in the performance of blocks 81 and 83. We have 1 owner in that block, and we've got less than 50% occupancy of our tenants. These properties also require significant investment to bring them into a suitable standard for us. Table 2, sorry, members. What I'll do now, members, is bring you forward to existing projects that we have within our Housing Asset Management Framework report, and I'll start off with St Cuthbert Street in Catrin. Members, you'll recall that we've got previous determinations to relocate our tenants and buy back homes where possible, and then to look to market the properties available for sale. Members, we have 3 owners that we've currently engaged with, one of which we have an agreement to buy back. However, there are 2 owners that have refused, and negotiations have now been closed off. Members, what we would now be proposing is to move through the already agreed proposals is to market the properties that are within our portfolio for disposal and for a period of up to 12 months. Members, for Witch Road and Dean Street and indeed Orchard Street flats, Following an initial study, this suggests that the removal of the flats, particularly above the shops, is feasible. However, there are a number of areas of uncertainty, including dealings with the shop owners, potential road closures, and significant technical issues with the undertaking of the works. This in turn has created a bit of uncertainty around about estimated costs, and our revised proposal, members, is to go away, get the appropriate engineering solutions and come back to members with a separate paper setting out our recommended proposals for Dean Street, but with the same outcome of we would look to remove these flats from above the shops and the 2 bookend blocks as well. Members will recall for the former Commerce Hostel that we're awaiting an approach for a community asset transfer. However, that hasn't come to fruition, and members, what we will do now is work closely with our legal team to dispose of the hostel within Comores. Members, I take you forward then to paragraphs 36 of the report about Clinchard Place. Again, we have rehomed all of our tenants that have lived here, but we require further investigation works indeed before we carry out these demolitions commencing. This activity will compromise of pre-demolition and asbestos surveys and will require consideration to be given to the re-garden space to the adjoining residents relative to their title position as well. And indeed, there'll be significant community consultation for the external space. Members have already touched on, as part of, by way of my update in terms of the appendices about West Church Street and New Milnes, and already noted that our plan now is to dispose of our interest within this block. Members, before you on the slide, you'll see Bentick Square in Galston. All of our tenants, with the exception of one, have been rehoused from the flats that you see, and we have got positive conversations on going to find a housing option, and we're due to conclude that shortly. Members will note that we are going to retain those properties, the terraced houses that you see before you, and we are working closely with Gary and Neil McCulloch within Haas to see about works to improve the external look of those remaining blocks through maybe an area-based scheme. So we'll look to ensure that when we walk away from this site that it looks as best as it can. Members, again, I've already went through East Main Street, Darval, but just to illustrate the blocks that I referenced earlier in my presentation, that we look to take those blocks away. Members, I would also note for your information that I've had conversations with our colleagues within the Health and Social Care Partnership, and indeed we're looking at proposals and demand to see whether we were able to put an assisted living model within Darval on this site. And we've done some initial overlays of both mini and full-scale assisted living models, and it would appear to be feasible, subject to statutory consents and indeed agreement by the partnership. Members, paragraph 54 and 55 of the report, I set out about the work that we do with our tenants and residents who may be impacted by decisions that we make. And you can be absolutely assured that we provide that person-centred approach with individual engagement. And we've rehomed 423 households in this way and successfully, while identifying both unmet housing and unmet support needs, and we've addressed those. And that will continue. Members, at paragraphs 56 to 57 of the report, you'll note that the scheme of delegation, as agreed in November 2017, is that the Head of Housing and Communities, in conjunction with the Solicitor of the Council, has delegated powers to approve any house disposal that is not less than 75% of home buyers' report valuation. Members, from paragraphs 58 to 60, I set out our recommendations this year in terms of rent increase, of which we would recommend the consultations commences on the Monday the 6th of December through to Friday the 14th of January. Members again, tenants again will have two options between a 1.5% and a 2.5% rent increase. 1.5% rent increase, members, is an average of £1.23 per week. And proposal 2 of 2.5% would be an average increase of £2.04 per week. Members, in 2020-2021, East Ayrshire Council's average rent was £74.11, which compares favourably to the Scottish average of £76.49, and we believe that this rent increase would keep us below the Scottish average. Members, legal and risk implications from paragraphs 61 to 62 are set out before you. And our policy, HR equality and financial implications are set out within the report. Members, it's important to note that all of the recommendations that you hear before you at this Cabinet is affordable with the 1.5% rent increase. Members, that concludes the delivery of the Housing Asset Management Framework Report, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Blair. Really good report there, quite comprehensive. Good to see we were able to get sustainability attendances, kept that going, and kept the void rent loss down during the period of the pandemic and the COVID. And just when you're brushing on the point there about the consultation with in terms of the proposed rent increase, obviously tenants will have been affected this year in terms of all of the programme have slipped a wee bit because of COVID. Could you just maybe comment on just how the COVID's affected the department this year in terms of the programme and ability to contact the tenants? Have you been able to contact the tenants' organisations? Just look for a bit of reassurance, Blair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We've had full consultation, whether it be digitally through Teams or indeed meeting face-to-face with the Tenants Federation. We had, for those individuals that will be impacted by the decisions as part of this report, we had personal contact on Monday of this week with each of the people that are affected to talk through their initial housing options and impacts that may have on them. So I'm absolutely assured that our engagement is robust across both of our SHIP programme in terms of community engagement for our new builds and through our HIP programme where we've had very visible communications on our website, etc., about the impacts that the pandemic's had on us.
And the kind of slippage to programmes about anticipating catching up within a year or 2 years, or it's no, because we're still in a pandemic, it's difficult to forecast, but can you comment on that?
In terms of our SHIP programme, we are on track, Chair, and that will be set out just shortly by Debs. In terms of our HIP programme, we've seen significant slippage in our programme given the pandemic, and we have underspends within the HIP programme from last year, of which we will reprofile over the next 5 years so that we again catch up with our programme and fast track where we can. And Gary will touch on that shortly as well through his paper.
Thanks, Blair. And finally, just for a local matter for myself, before I open it out, in terms of Dean Street shops, I'm pleased that that's progressing because commercial, it's a really important area, very busy, and even your photograph, as always, is busy. But I'm just thinking in terms of when you're going back to look at the kind of redesign, obviously if you could extend the car parking somewhere and provide more safe or even safer parking, that would be something, to include in the brief, because the shops are and other premises are really, really popular. So if that would really be helpful for the community as well. But
thank you, Chair. We really acknowledge the significance of the environmental aspect of the shops, given that we are building 43 beautiful bungalows just at its side. So it's going to be really important to us how we leave the aesthetic of the shops, and that's going to be fundamental to our recommendations that we'll put forward as well. There are clearly legal issues there to be considered, given the shops are in the majority in private ownership. But we will consider that as a team and we'll look to get a positive solution. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Blair. Thanks very much for that. Look forward to that. Anyone else want to comment? Jackie, then John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, firstly, thanks a lot, Blair, and thanks to everybody involved in producing that paper. There's clearly been some good positive progress. It was good to hear about the reduction in the red properties and again in the buybacks that we have looked at, I believe 49 of them, to target and specify individual needs in our community. But I wonder for that, can you advise me what impact the improvement in clearing of sites has had in the council stock numbers since 2016 to now? And also, as a second question on a different issue, can you perhaps give us a wee bit more information on when you think you will be able to provide Cabinet with a more detailed report about Dean Street, please?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Todd. The net effect, Councillor Todd, that we've seen through the last 5 years is a reduction in our stock numbers by about 600 properties. And that includes the properties we've demolished, the sites that we've refreshed with our new build. So the net effect is a reduction of about 600 properties. Over the next 5 years, you'll see, which again Debs will touch on shortly, is about 500 new homes coming into our ownership. So within the next 5 years, we would hope to equalise the position we were at the outset of the HAM work. Thanks. In terms of Dean Street, I would like to come back to Cabinet in the summer with their proposals, subject to the engineering's works being considered. So I think the summer would be a reasonable timescale to come back to members with our proposals. Thank you.
Thanks, Blair. Okay, John.
Aye, thanks for the paper, and I've got to say that it's pleasing that these papers are separate, because previously they've been in with other lengthy papers where it makes it a huge cabinet and it allows for much better scrutiny. And I think also we have an opportunity to talk through the papers with senior officers and then having an all elected members briefing. We can't ask for much more. We've been allowed to really scrutinise the paper, and I think that's always a good thing. I've got to say I'm disappointed in the result of the former public hall in Comores, but I'm pretty realistic. It's a pretty quirky building, but I thought we could have used it. However, that wasn't to be. So it doesn't mean that I'm still no disappointed. But I've just got one question. I have asked it previously, but it's something that always bothers me is, what do we do proactively for our tenant that's the last in the block, that maybe doesn't benefit from all our external work that we're doing? So I was wondering, and if we're not doing anything, is there something that we could do in the future? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Our strategy for lasting blocks was that we would look to dispose of those properties at the point in which they became void. We have, in terms of proactive contact, clearly there is challenges in the majority of these blocks with being able to deliver our housing investment programme, which would be the external works. We would be continuing with the internal work. We do not proactively contact those people that are in lasting blocks to move them, given the challenges that would present us in terms of being able to rehome all of those people that would be left in that lasting block situation. So while we absolutely fulfil our obligations as a landlord, clearly in terms of external works, they may be impacted as a result.
Aye, thanks for that, Blair. Just to go back to Comores Hostel, if we're disposing of it, I'd like to see that it doesn't end up another Stuart Institute Hall, that it's going to be lying there like somebody buys it and then they don't progress with work. So I'm hoping that there's something that we can put, even if it is a burden to the buyer, that they need to get the work done and it doesn't sit there as a derelict building in the middle of a conservation area in the heart of the village. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Councillor McGill, I'll give you assurances that we work very closely with our colleagues in legal when we look to dispose of this property, acknowledging the significance of the building within the community, and indeed the communal nature of a disposal will provide some challenges, I would suggest, for our colleagues in legal, but we work closely with them so that we would try to avoid a situation where the property becomes a blight on the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Blair. Tom?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Blair, for this paper and the opportunity to talk through it with you last week to answer some of the questions I have. But just a couple of points maybe I would like to raise. One is about the Dean Street shops. I think, as you rightly say, it's a very technical solution that we're looking at to take the flats off and leave the shops. And I know you're going to be consulting with the owners of these premises. I hope that one of the discussions we'll be having with them is about the possibility of actually demolishing the shops and rebuilding them, you know, as new units. Albeit that might mean the shops having to close for a period of time, but I think that would be worthwhile just pursuing with them to see what their thoughts are, and possibly relocating them into other locations near the town centre. The second point is really about the rent increase, and I know we're putting forward the option of 1.5 and 2.5, but I think every year we've done this, it's always come back from the tenants that the 1.5 is what they want, and that's understandable. And I think perhaps we're actually victims of our own success in this, that we've improved so many houses to a good standard and built so many new houses that if you're sitting in one of these, you know, quite comfortably, why would you perhaps want to spend extra money to bring somebody else's house up to standard? And that's just, you know, human nature. And I think too, if you're sitting in a house that hasn't been improved, saying I'm paying the same rent as somebody in a brand new house, so why should I pay a bit more now? I think, you know, it's just human nature, and I think that's something we need to take into account as we go forward.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cook. I'll take your question about Dean Street first. Councillor Cook, our Housing Asset Management Future Homes Board has fully considered the option of the possibility of demolishing the shops at Dean Street. However, we considered that would not be an appropriate option at this time, given that would also mean the dissolving potentially of businesses. And the advice on that would be that it could cost a significant sum, zeros upon zeros, is how it was described to me, to the council of being able to proceed with a programme such as that. So at this moment in time, Councillor Cook, our option is the demolition as we've set out. However, should that come back once we fully understand the implications and cost of that, we would then therefore weigh up that against what it may cost us to demolish the shops to rebuild at that time. I hope that answers that first part. In terms of the rent increase, Councillor Cook, what we've actually done over the last 3 years is taken the opportunity to speak to all of our tenants personally, where they have indicated displeasure with the rent increase. To be able to talk through with them what it means, how it impacts on others, etc. And that's proven to be quite successful. And again, I would commit that we will do that as a service again, to be engaging personally with people that respond to the consultation. It's not something, when we look at the results of the rent consultation, overwhelmingly, it's an agreement with the proposals that we've set out. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Everybody else? Okay, thanks everybody for your contributions there. Just go back to the recommendations there. Can everybody happy with the 11 recommendations there? Okay, thanks for that. Go to paper 4 now, and that's the SHIP, the East Ayrshire Strategic Housing Investment Plan. And Blair, are you going to introduce it? Or?
Is it the SHIP paper, Chair?
Oh, missed one. Sorry.
Housing Investment Programme.
Housing Investment Programme number 3. Just keep me.
Thank you, Chair. Gary will take us through the paper this morning. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. I thought those last 3 months of work had gone to misuse there. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate you'll all have read the paper, and we've obviously had the briefing sessions, so I'm going to summarise the main points and then take any questions that you may have. The recommendations are listed at paragraph 2 of the paper. Really important to note that the HIP paper complements and it links directly to both the HAMF and the SHIP papers to ensure that we achieve the best outcomes for communities. Point 7 shows that we complied with the SHQS, 98.34% of our stock meeting the standard, and the remaining 1.66 or 201 homes were either exempt or in abeyance. And point 14 highlighted that 99.4% of our properties met the energy efficiency standard for social housing, or EISH1, with the remaining 76 homes or 0.6% being in abeyance. Now, one change from previous milestones set out in last year's paper set out by the Scottish Government is that a review of the EISH2 standard will now take place in 2023 as opposed to 2025. and that follows the ZEST report, which is yet another acronym, Zero Emissions Social Housing Task Force, who highlighted that the East 2 standard is again based around the Energy Performance Certificate ratings, and they raised the question about whether this is actually the right thing to do. So the 2023 review is going to be key for that. As I shared with some of the members in the briefing, interestingly, the Scottish Federation of Housing Associations, along with Changeworks, did some work to look at what their members would need to invest to meet East 2 as it's set out just now in Scotland, and they've estimated that that would be £2 billion for them, which as a result would only bring 9% of their tenants out of fuel poverty. So I think by anyone's standards, that's not a great investment. So the review is going to be really key for us. The impact of COVID, which you raised, Chair, earlier on, is set out in some depth in points 19 to 32. And just to confirm, the pandemic, it really continues to have a significant impact on the housing investment programme and the work of housing asset services as a whole, on a scale which we could never really have imagined. Investment programmes were stopped, some of them are not yet restarted, maintenance works put on hold, significantly delayed, tenants were asked not to report non-essential works. We had to make significant operational changes to the way that we could undertake work, which ultimately had a real impact on cost and efficiencies. We've had continual loss of key personnel due to shielding and symptoms, really significant disruption and cost implications around the supply chain for materials and products, and still ongoing huge challenges around recruitment. So I think it'd be fair to say it's been a difficult experience. The sector is really still dealing with the perfect storm. The increased pressures around the availability and the cost of materials is something that we just see ongoing, and the increased demand for construction workers will undoubtedly impact on the delivery of all investment programmes. Indeed, point 28 highlights that the Construction Industry Training Board produced a report in June identifying that there will be an extra 26,250 construction workers needed in Scotland by the end of 2025. So that demonstrates the scale of the current shortfall. Points 33 to 40 in the paper look at the Housing to 2040 strategy, which is described as Scotland's first ever long-term national housing strategy. It's built around 4 key themes: more homes at the heart of great places, affordability and choice, affordable warmth and zero emission homes, and improving the quality of all homes. So new build homes are great, and Debs is going to talk us through the SHIP paper, but I think it's really important to remember that the majority of the existing stock that we have is going to be our core stock for many years to come, and that we need to maintain investment in that. The strategy aims to develop a new housing standard which will cover all homes, whether they're new or existing, and it will apply regardless of the tenure. It's intended to mean that the existing homes keep pace with new homes and that nobody's left behind. The Scottish Government are aiming to publish the draft standard in 2023 and phase the introduction from 2025 to 2030. The Housing to 2040 strategy also sets out key milestones for affordable warmth and for zero carbon emissions. And like everybody else that's here and on screen, I absolutely understand that things need to be different and we all need to play our part. There are, however, clearly difficult decisions to be made and discussions to be had to ensure that for the social housing sector, it's a just transition, as I hear everybody saying that it has to be. Housing to 2040 is going to bring real financial challenges for us and every other local authority around the new housing standard, decarbonisation and the net zero retrofit agenda. Alacho have estimated that the retrofit agenda for solely local authority stock in Scotland will cost in the region of £5 billion. And to put that into some sort of context, that's equivalent to everything that's been spent in the whole sector over the last 10 years for capital works. One of the members asked me last week when we would stop fitting gas boilers and start decarbonising our homes with low carbon technology. Clearly, that's difficult to answer right now. Housing to 2040 highlights that the majority of domestic properties that are off the gas grid will be zero emission by 2030, and that nearly all others by 2040. Decarbonising isn't as simple as just changing from gas boilers to heat pumps, where there are, of course, concerns around costs and suitability. It's about putting hot water storage back into houses that we've been removing for the last 20 years. It probably means changing layout significantly and reorganising space, as well as fitting a system that is not nearly as responsive and functions in a very different way. So I think it's perhaps fair to say that many people are underestimating the disruption that tenants might face. And I think it's really important, as one member said during the briefing, that we're not pushed into the wrong solutions before the technology is both affordable and robust. Over a third of our tenants in social homes are in fuel poverty right now, and it's vital that they don't face the double jeopardy of increased energy bills and increased rents as a result of decarbonising homes, and that most importantly, it doesn't cut across the critical social wellbeing agenda. But it's not all bad. So people often say that pictures mean more than words, so hopefully I've got a few slides that can help. Points 47 to 51 cover our external envelope enhancement programme. These are a couple of before and after images on the screen from Logan, where the Chief Exec came in summer and met some of the teams that were delivering that work, along with a couple of quotes from tenants, which I think really capture the impact of the work. Works to Properties in this programme continue to focus on improving the overall energy efficiency of the homes in conjunction with the renewal of external elements, very much continuing our whole house approach and trying to future-proof houses as much as possible moving forward. Procurement work's ongoing to identify the financial impact of COVID, and this will clearly inform our plans moving forward. But a sum of £40 million has been set aside for the period of the plan for this work stream, which, as I hope you can see, is having a huge impact, transforming homes and communities. Paragraph 52 to 55 covers energy efficient windows and doors, and members will be aware of the really significant challenges we've seen in the procurement of this particular contract. We've made arrangements for 2022-23 to deliver this work where the houses are involved in our whole house approach through that standalone contract, and we're going to work with procurement colleagues to tender the contract again early in 22 to deliver the additional works required, and a sum of 4.3 million has been identified for this work. Points 56 to 61 detail our commitment to renewing energy efficient heating systems to our homes, and again highlight that the delivery of this programme will be dependent on the position regards COVID. The team have worked really hard to be able to continue to deliver this work in really challenging situations through the current year, and we've identified 800 homes for 22-23 to receive new heating, and there's a sum of £13.2 million set aside in the paper. Points 62 to 67 highlight our aspirations around the renewal of modern facilities. And we've got a couple of slides there following recent work again with the Tenants Federation to look at the specification. The COVID meant that no improvement work of this nature was able to be carried out within tenanted properties, and we've only recently been able to start at a much reduced rate. So in order to mitigate some of the impact, it's proposed that efforts be made to increase the number of homes to receive this to 600 per year for the period of this plan. This will be dependent, of course, on market conditions and the ability to engage with suitable partners. And while the additional properties would be delivered by a partner contractor, the design and the supervision of the work will all be carried out by additional resource within Housing Asset Services. So as you can hopefully see from the images, the work undertaken with the Fed has really seen positive changes which look great and have been really well received. This is a really key programme for us. It's delivering great outcomes for our tenants, and there's £30 million set aside for the period of the plan. Point 68 to 73 covers the electrical safety inspections, and as I pointed out last year, the Scottish Housing Quality Standard now requires full electrical safety checks to be carried out every 5 years or earlier if there's a change of tenancy, and this is intended to enhance the safety and security for our tenants. Members will also be aware that legislation comes into force in February 2022 that requires all homes to have interlinked smoke, carbon monoxide and heat detection in place. And while we can evidence the compliance for this new legislation, there's also a recurring requirement to renew these detectors every 10 years, regardless of the type that's installed. So a sum of £5 million has been set aside to ensure that all of this work can be carried out over the period of the plan. So in summary, there are major challenges, particularly around financing, to meet potential new standards and decarbonisation ahead for us and for every other local authority. But despite the challenges, there's really much to be positive about. One of the most positive things to happen despite COVID was that in Haas we were able to bring in 14 new apprentices in various roles this year. And that included opportunities for existing craft assistants and new young people. Some of them are on the screen. We couldn't get them all because some of them were at college learning new skills. We've also been able to provide training and support and development opportunities for a number of our tradespersons, and they've advanced their careers away from the tools, and I think this is clearly the way forward for us. Over the next 5 years, a further £93.6 million will be invested in existing homes with energy efficiency at the heart of the programme. £40 million for external envelope enhancement. It'll be absolutely transformational for homes and communities. Overall, a hugely positive programme of investment works that are lying ahead, and I would be delighted to take any questions that you may have. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Gary. Once again, an excellent presentation, and to think I nearly skipped you over at the start. No, you're saying that it's an excellent programme, loads there delivering not just for our tenants, but helping the local economy as well, and rising to the challenge of decarbonisation. But as you said there, you've got challenges within the pandemic, but for paragraph 21 onward, we can see quite clearly that getting Brexit done does have its consequences on our communities, and we see them in terms of construction workers and in terms of timber supplies and other supplies very much affected by the circumstances we face. However, we'll rise to these challenges as we do, and I think we've got an ambitious programme there, and I think it's important, as you say, that the increased energy charges are affecting a lot of our people that are struggling just now, and it's important that they don't get caught up with having to pay unnecessarily for that, and we take cognizance of that when we're doing the programme. But that we know that when we're carrying out the programme, that we do at the end of the day help to reduce fuel bills significantly, and that's really good. So I'm really impressed with just what we're delivering, and just we're doing all this within the framework of community wealth building. A lot of local work and local training and local suppliers are doing well out of this as well, and it's important that we're able to step up despite all the challenges that we face, and get the programme back on track. And we're doing really well in those circumstances. And I just thank you for the presentation, Gary. Any other comments or questions? We've got Jim first, Jim Roberts. I'll take Jackie if you can't come through. Jackie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Tia. Gary, I think everybody in this meeting must have been able to feel your heartfelt concerns and caution that you were giving there. and I think we all take it on board. I totally agree with you that the existing housing stock has to be prioritised, it has to be maintained. It's about what's good and best for our communities, and the majority of them live in existing stock. I also accept it's not going to be easy, and we've got some huge challenges, some of which we couldn't have seen thanks to the pandemic. Now, all that said, I've got to say I hand on heart thank this team in particular for the constant hard work and dedication that they have done. I thank you for providing the report. I think there is good in there as well. I think you've got a lot to be proud of. And I think, could you tell me that despite the impact of all these things that's happened, can you tell me how much we've actually ended up investing in the housing stock over the past 5 years, please? Can you also give me some examples of what future-proofing homes involves with regard to energy efficiency? And just a huge thanks for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Gary?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks very much, Councillor Todd. That's important for the team, and I'm sure they'll be pleased to hear that. They've supported the business all the way through. Particularly people like Neil McCulloch and Quentin Fulton and Karen Aitken and Jim New, etc. They've been excellent, and they've all worked so hard. Investment in stock. You're right. COVID did have an impact over the last 18 months, but despite that, we've still invested over £74 million in the last 5 years in housing stock, which I think is a significant investment in our assets. Future-proofing, absolutely. The whole house approach, we're currently doing some work. We're looking at some modelling to see if we can introduce additional layers of insulation in particularly the traditional houses. So the houses with cavities, where we fill the cavities and then render it. We're looking at the technology to see if we can actually put an additional layer of insulation onto that property, working with Strathclyde University around a number of solutions, which would hopefully reduce the demand for the energy, which would make the decarbonisation easier when we move across to that. Also next year, we're looking at inline PV solutions for the new roofing that's being done within the contract. And in Ayrshire, working closely with, again, Strathclyde Uni and the team that are working on the core project around two blocks of houses just now to see how we can super insulate those non-traditional houses and really make an impact on it. So lots of good work ongoing, but thank you very much for your positive thoughts.
Thanks, Gary. We'll go to John now, then we'll try Jim Roberts again. I see there's an IT buddy in there, but we'll try John. John can go first.
Sorry, Chair. I know, excellent report, Gary, and that's coming for full support, cross-party support throughout this council. And just I think, bearing in mind the challenges as we go forward, converting to green energy, because I think if we're trying to take the gas boilers off of folk, we'd be telling them no uncertain terms that they couldn't possibly heat their houses without them. So we've a bit to go in that, but appreciate the paper and the work that's been done, especially throughout the pandemic. And as it's pointed out in paragraph 20, the experience has been exceptionally difficult for many, and working day and working at the very front line for the entire period has clearly had an impact on the health and well-being of many members of our team. So heartfelt thanks for that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. That's appreciated. Jim Roberts.
Morning, can you hear me?
Yes.
But
that's just through the wall. No. I can hear you fine too.
Hey, morning, guys. Really good report, Gary. Also a big thank you to everybody involved in the seminar. I found that really useful. Gary, just to pick up on the impact of COVID, which you mentioned, you put out briefing notes in the past in regard to problems with supply chain, shortage of materials. It's impacted on the delivery of what we wanted to do. So we're probably still in exactly the same place. Supply shortages and the impact on what we aspire to do. Our question really revolves around, you're saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do the next thing. But if we've got shortages in supply chain, shortages in workforce, etc., that's going to be impacting on what we can reasonably expect to achieve. Do you have any further comment on that? Anything further we can do? Maybe can't do much in terms of the supply chain materials for the likes of builders, merchants, etc. But probably the workforce aspect. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Jim. Gary?
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Roberts. There's a number of things. You're right. There's a number of issues and there's a number of problems. There's a number of things that we've been fortunate with. We've had really strong partnering arrangements with a number of our existing contractors, which has really helped us to continue to deliver work because we're seen as key clients for them because of that relationship. So they've prioritised our work. So for the external envelope work, for instance, which has been able to be kept going, that was at the expense, I'm sure, of others because materials were limited. We're looking just now at additional frameworks and additional procurement opportunities to try and give us some more strength. We've looked in the past, so for instance, in the central heating programme, we looked at bulk buying boilers and we brought them into store where we would never have had them before. So it's a real mix of solutions, but really just the biggest thing for us is building those strong relationships with partner contractors, and obviously our own teams, and trying to make sure that we strategically plan for the next years ahead.
Thanks, Gary. Who've got next? Jim McMahon next, and then Tom. Then Neil. Okay, Jim.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for the presentation, Gary, and like Jackie and the rest of us, I think I felt the pain during that, understanding the pressures that you're going to come under, trying to achieve these targets by 2030, 2045. Decarbonising our houses would be easy, but it comes down to cost of energy supply, because some of our electric heating systems are already doing that. But it's just that coefficiency performance that we can't reach. If they match the same efficiency as air source heat pumps, where we're modern day electric systems, then the job would be a lot easier. If I could just comment on the whole house approach and the external works, it's not only pleasant to look at and really nice when we go by these houses now, but you can only imagine the impact it's having on our tenants and how that should be reducing their heating bills and hopefully that keep them away and possibly fuel poverty. I'm really encouraged with the electrical testing programme. We've got the introduction of the new smoke, heat and CO2 detectors, and that's going to be starting again, improving the safety of our housing right all the way out through it. Again, I think I'm going to mention that point about the apprentices again. That was really encouraging and brought a smile to my face during seeing the picture. And hopefully we continue to do that. Just extend my gratitude again, Gary, to the full team, but I'd also like to extend my gratitude to our tenants as well for their patience during this period over the last 18 months, and knowing that the works were there, they were on that list to get them done, but eventually knowing we'll get to them as well. So again, thank you not only to our workforce, but to our tenants as well.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, thanks for that. Tom?
Thanks, Chair. No, thanks, Gary, for that presentation, which I think quite clearly sets out the challenges ahead and the work you've been doing to address these challenges as soon as possible. You know, mentioning East 2 and I think the figure of £2 billion to take 9% of people out of fuel poverty, and that's really a startling figure and just shows the extent of the costs that's going to be involved in some of these moves towards net zero. I think, you know, we have to start on that route, but I think it's not going to be an easy route. But, you know, picking up on what other people have said, the external cladding, you know, the improvement that makes to the house, to the efficiency of the energy efficiency of the house, but to the whole improvement of the neighbourhood as you move through it. I mean, one of the areas I keep reflecting on it is Knockintibber. Knockintibber looked quite a rundown little village, but now it's a thriving village, and even the community have pulled together now as a result of, I think, the housing all looking much better, much smarter, and the whole community have worked together to try and improve that. Just a couple of points. I think one was in relation to the new regulations of fire smoke alarms. I think, Gary, you mentioned the CO2 alarms had to be linked. I don't think actually the regulations state that the CO2 monitor has to be linked into the rest of them, but that's just a moot point. And I know the Scottish Fire and Rescue are hoping to come to the next meeting and do some fire scrutiny to talk through their plans for that. And I think that the final point was around apprentices. Taking on apprentices, absolutely great that we're taking on the number we are. Hopefully we can increase that as things start to open up, and we can get more young people who are out there looking for jobs and bring them in there. But just a question on that is, are we still going down the multi-trade route with some of our tradesmen, so that it can be more efficient when they go into a house and they're not just doing one trade, they can do two trades? And I said that was the final point, but no, there is another point, and it was referring back to the using our partner contractors for kitchen bathroom replacements. Well the report I did a number of years ago through GNS into the impact of that and the problems we were having, and I think you're trying to address that now by making sure that we've got our own clerk of works on site keeping an eye on that. So, but thanks to everybody for the work you've done over the last 2 years on this.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for that. Just Gary, do you want to come in? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks through your chair. Yeah, no, you're right. The smoke detectors are all interlinked, Councillor Cook. The requirement is that we also have a CO detector. Multi-trade route, absolutely. It's not training trades to be other trades, but it's allowing them to do those supplementary roles, and we've seen a big benefit from that and a real buy-in from our teams as well. So it really has been a win-win. And yeah, just on the KBRs, absolutely, we're not going back to 2008 days. We will be all over it with our own staff, and we will not be appointing anybody that we have any concerns about in the slightest. So you've got my assurances around that. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. Neil.
Thanks, Chair. Just, I'm probably going to repeat some stuff. That I would just like to add my congratulations to Gary and the whole team. It's quite inspiring when you see where they are, where they're going, and their determination and commitment. The whole house programme, I think it turns a house into a home, and I think it's wonderful. The improvements, the examples of the improvements Gary showed us were really exciting and top quality, and that's good for our tenants as well. But I think the COVID problem is a problem. It's there, and I don't know if we're going to beat it, but we just have to be on the ball, be ready, as the team seem to be, and get ready to kick off whenever we can. So, but once again, thanks very much, Gary, and everyone.
Okay, thanks very much, Neil, for those remarks. I think that's appreciated. Okay, I don't see anything else, so I think we can just go to recommendations on page 26. Can we agree recommendations? Okay. And on to item 4 now, and that's East Ayrshire Strategic Housing Investment Plan, the SHIP. Debs.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. The Strategic Housing Investment Plan, or SHIP 22-27 report, provides an update on site progress in terms of the current year's programme, seeks approval of the draft SHIP 22-27 that has been submitted to Scottish Government in draft form, and seeks approval to submit the approved SHIP back to Scottish Government. The recommendations are set out at paragraph 2, to note and approve the current programme at table 1, and to note the local development plan affordable housing policy proposals that form part of that plan at table 10. To approve the SHIP 22-27 as set out at tables 5 to 9, the narrative and spreadsheet at appendices 1 to 2, and also the submission to Scottish Government, and to approve Appendix 3 that represents a maximum potential council investment of £100 million. To delegate authority to the Head of Housing Communities to assign other agreed SHIP projects as required, and to approve the deletion of the proposed development at 5254 Brown Street, Nelson Street, New Mills from the programme, authorise the return of Scottish Government grant received to date, authorise facilities and property management working with others to review the site to produce proposals and costs to support alternative community action plan priorities for reporting back to Cabinet, and also to note that F&PM are preparing proposals to address water ingress previously reported at the GAP site at 4850, 56, 58 Brown Street, as reported in last year's Cabinet on the 25th of November, and otherwise to note the content of the report. By way of background, the SHIP's a 5-year rolling plan that links the local housing strategy strategic priorities to the delivery of affordable housing and guides the allocation of Scottish Government investment. The background information contained in the report refers to the Scottish Government's Housing to 2040 housing strategy as set out by Gary to deliver new affordable homes, and it also confirms that the annual HAMF reviews were undertaken during the summer to inform the SHIP. The programme update notes that 477 council completions have been achieved to date, with completions in 2021 at Fraser Walk in Kilmarnock, Sunnyside Square and Treeswood Head, both by partner housing associations, and further notes site starts and delighted to report at Witch Road in Kilmarnock, Mill of Shield and Hanniston Avenue in Drongan, Quarry Now in Auchinleck, Cross House in Kilmarnock, Corrie Mains Farm in Mauchline and Irvine Road in Kilmores across the council and RSL partners. The update on the council's wheelchair accessible housing target notes that across accessible bungalows, housing for older ambulant disabled people and assisted living properties, the SHIP allows for just under 17% of housing to be designed for particular needs, and a further 52.8% designed for particular needs are under construction of the sites taken forward since the target was introduced. It's worth noting that future proposals will be developed to take account of the target, because we are mindful that with the target being introduced last year, projects had already started to be worked up towards delivery by that point. The Council's new homes delivery is about more than a fabric first approach, as Gary has set out in his report, as wider community benefits will be realised working with our partner CCG Scotland. At Witch Road, we are looking to deliver £8,000 worth of community investment, along with a range of on-site placements, apprentices and other works to provide community benefits in the communities. Complementing all of this activity, the ongoing open market acquisition scheme aligns with the local housing strategy priorities that Chris will set out in his report, increasing the supply of priority house types, meeting specific and urgent housing need, and our wider housing quality improvement and regeneration priorities that Gary has already set out. The acquisition scheme allows for an additional 140 affordable homes to be delivered, and we currently receive £30,000 worth of Scottish Government grant investment per transaction towards that programme. The current programme delivery with unit numbers is detailed at Table 1, and in terms of the applicable guidance and our resource planning assumptions, these are set out at Tables 2 and 3. Importantly, it's worth noting that the Scottish Government has reviewed its benchmarks with regard to the delivery of grant investment for our programme, and they're proposing a move away from a flat rate grant subsidy amount to something called a 3-person equivalent factor, conversion factor rather, which importantly will maintain the disparity that currently exists between council and RSL proposals, such that the grant investment delivered will be different across the two landlords, and the impacts or the potential impacts of that new grant investment programme are set out at Table 4. The SHIP allows for a total of up to 1,087 new rehabilitated and acquired affordable homes. And within the SHIP report, we propose to delegate authority to the Head of Housing Communities to assign other agreed projects within the programme, as has been the case in previous years, and that introduces flexibility into the programme. Further, the SHIP confirms that the Scottish Government, the SHIP was submitted to the Scottish Government by the end of October, which is the deadline set out in their guidance. In terms of the Brown Street, Nelson Street, New Mills proposals, the report summarises activity undertaken by CCG Scotland and their consultants relative to SEPA's objection and their policy position to the delivery of a 16-unit development at the site, and proposals to effect permanent repair across and to approve the cost to address the reported water ingress at the GAP site as noted, subject to a value for money assessment on being undertaken by Facilities and Property Management. In this regard, a meeting was held in April 21 with representatives from SEPA, the Council, CCG and importantly their consultants, with SEPA reiterating their policy position and objection, and CCG's consultant confirming that all technical work undertaken in respect of flooding confirms the site is within an active floodplain. The latest flood modelling confirms the proposed development levels will increase flooding to existing properties. The East Ayrshire Flooding Officer has withdrawn support for the application due to this increase in flooding, and INDEV and Kaya, who are the contractor's consultants, have provided their technical assessments to date. However, it's not within their remit to support the development. It's therefore proposed to delete the development from the programme, as no affordable housing may be delivered as a result of SEPA's objection and policy position, return all Scottish Government grant sums, and commission F&PM working with other council services, community representatives and elected members to produce proposals and costs to support alternative community action plan priorities for further reporting to Cabinet. Meantime, F&PM are preparing proposals to address the water ingress at the GAP site as reported. The SHIP 2227 is set out at tables 5 to 9 and Appendices 1 to 2. And of note, I would draw your attention to the sites that have started recently for the Council at Witch Road, at Quarry Now and at Millishield and Hanniston Avenue in Drongan. 3 of the 4 projects that are being taken forward have already achieved site start, with the last one at Bellevue Gardens due to achieve a site start early in the new year. It's worth noting that 2 of the developments at Witch Road and at Quarry Now seek to support our residents to live independently in the community in support of not only our community care aspirations and caring for Ayrshire aspirations, but also to support the community plan, town centre regeneration priority, and importantly again making use of cleared sites, so supporting our transformation strategy. They're also very much aligned to the Scottish Government's Housing to 2040 national strategy. The local development plan affordable housing proposals are set out at table 10, and moving from consideration of sites to the wider strategic aspiration to promote town centre regeneration, as I'd mentioned at the sites that have recently commenced. The Council's committed to delivering affordable homes to create new socially connected spaces and to explore opportunities to creatively repurpose building to align with the LHS strategic priorities and to support the creation of the 20-minute neighbourhoods. Future sites will inform future programming proposals. The SHIP therefore promotes town centre living, supports older people to live in the community, reflects the ongoing HAMF assessment to determine suitable sites for affordable housing across East Ayrshire, and aligns with the community plan and other plans set out in the report. The legal implications and human resources implications are as set out, and with regard to equality impacts, positive impacts have been concluded will be delivered in terms of meeting housing and support requirements for older people, those with disabilities and people with other particular needs. In terms of financial implications, the applicable Scottish Government guidance confirms the slippage factor and the resource planning assumptions that are to be used, and the total project costs are estimated and will be reviewed and updated, with total borrowing required as shown at Appendix 3, equating to 69.163 million over 5 years, with the appropriate accounting arrangements to ensure debt charges are spread across the relevant financial years. In terms of the risk implications, in the event of a delayed site start, there is a risk that the Scottish Government may require funding to be returned. However, the Council liaises closely with the Scottish Government and would seek to accelerate other projects within the programme to take up the slippage, and that's why we seek that delegated authority for the Head of Housing and Communities. In terms of ongoing impacts, experience with regards to COVID-19, which Gary's already picked up on, in terms of the supply chain on available labour and supplies, these are absolutely driving costs upwards. The SHIP has been developed taking account of these known impacts, and at Witch Road, Quarry Now and Millishield Hanniston Avenue, a risk-averse approach has been adopted with CCG to try to de-risk the projects in terms of the contractor's proposals, the elimination of inflationary risk on the supply chain, any impacts still to come through in terms of Brexit, and the wider supply chain issues. The SHIP aligns with the transformation strategy And I would note, with the exception of the reconfiguration works or second-hand purchases in the market or off-plan acquisitions, the new build proposals are set out to meet the silver standard. And I'm pleased to confirm that we will also be introducing fire suppression measures in our new builds through the form of sprinkler systems, starting with Witch Road. And I'm further pleased to confirm that in addition to that, we will be looking to move towards the delivery of net zero housing, starting at our first development to deliver net zero, which will be at Bellevue Gardens in Kilmarnock, which we're anticipating a site start being achieved early in the new year, subject to all the necessary consultations and consents. Thereafter, we will look to roll out the net zero proposals across our sites at Kennedy Drive, at Dalgleish Avenue and at Kilmarnock Road in Mauchline. And importantly, it's worth noting that the Kilmarnock Road site would be our first net zero proposal, which is an assisted living development, which has been brought forward in consultation with our partners in health and social care. In terms of our programme, we are looking to support the energy efficiency, delivery of energy efficiency homes in support of the Council's sustainability, climate change, carbon emissions and fuel poverty reduction targets as set out in the Council's climate change strategy and the Housing to 2040 national policy. Finally, the SHIP anticipates an affordable housing supply programme allocation of 89.178 million, and that includes carry forward spend in the current year to deliver 1,087 homes across new build, rehabilitated and second-hand purchases. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. That's a really ambitious programme there, and good to see getting back and run kind of post-pandemic again. And looking forward to seeing what the net zero properties at Bellevue Road look like. It's really interesting, and winding these through the other communities, as you mentioned. Just a wee thing, just to clarify for a moment, just the Dumfries Drive site, because somebody was asking about this. Why did we withdraw from that again? Just could you remind us? Just.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Dumfries Drive site has been deleted from the programme because the developer who owns the site has decided not to take the site forward for affordable housing provision.
Thanks, that's fine. Okay, there's a huge programme there, particularly, Irvine Road, whether it's Irvine Road Comores, Irvine Road Cruces or Irvine Road Kilmarnock, there seems to be houses getting built there. I'm sure that's going to cause confusion somewhere down the line. Members, any? Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, thank you, Debs. That was a comprehensive and detailed report. Seems to be a bit of a mixed bag. There's a lot of great work going on, look at Bellevue with the net zero. I'm slightly concerned about this 3-person equivalent and the impact that it could have. Couple of questions, if you don't mind. I'm wondering if completion of the flood prevention work at Newcomnock can be sped up in some kind of manner. Would that allow proposed sites at the Crown and Mason Avenue, would they have to remain in their prospective current position in the programme, or is the potential for them to be moved accordingly? And equally, I wanted to ask about Witch Road. A relatively recent Cabinet report that we had, we were told that, I've wrote it down, hold on, I was told that there was an application being made to the Scottish Government for additional grant funding, and I wondered if there was any update on that, please.
Jackie. Deb.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Yes, if I could take the flood query first. As you know, we're looking to take forward 2 sites in Newcomnock. So we have the former Crown Hotel site, which has been identified for a further assisted living development. And we've also introduced the Mason Avenue site, where we're looking to provide housing for older ambulant disabled residents. Absolutely, if we are in a position to move the projects forward, we would look to do so. So at the moment, we require to allow for those flood prevention works to complete in order that we can bring forward our applications for those 2 sites. Work can commence in the background with colleagues in facilities and property management and with the contractor CCG to look to advance those proposals. In the event those works were to accelerate relative to the flood prevention works, we would absolutely look to bring those forward in the programme. That would be subject to discussion with the communities. with the statutory consultations and consents that would be required, and it would also be in consultation with our colleagues at the Scottish Government. So absolutely we would look to try to move that round. And again, that's where the delegated authority comes in. That gives us that flexibility in the programme. I hope that answers that question. With regard to the Witch Road development, I'm pleased to confirm that further to the recent reports that I brought to Cabinet, where we set out our proposal to apply for additional funding to the Scottish Government, recognising the particular needs development that we were bringing forward at Witch Road. I'm pleased to confirm that our application for an extra £20,000 per unit was successful, which brings forward over £800,000 worth of additional investment to the project. I hope that helps.
You okay with that, Jackie?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, John. Next.
I know, thanks for that paper again, Ken, lots of ambition in there. I'd just like to ask a question regarding if we could flesh out what actually paragraphs 25 to 27 could mean for the council. Thank you.
John.
Thank you, through you, Chair. With regard to the benchmark subsidy levels that the Scottish Government have brought forward, we have been working to an older set of grant awards that were set out by the Scottish Government. I believe it was in 2016, where an award was made to RSL, Registered Social Landlord Partners, and a separate subsidy award that was made to councils, and those two figures didn't align. There was a disparity, a gap between the two. RSL partners receive a higher level of grant funding. The Scottish Government, I think it was set out in Housing to 2040, noted that they would look to review those subsidy benchmark levels, and they've actually proposed and now introduced a move away from a flat rate grant amount to a three-person equivalent conversion factor, which is a calculation that brings back all house types and sizes to one type or one size to allow for a comparator to be made. Essentially what's happening is the Scottish Government have confirmed that they will increase the proposed benchmark level, but the disparity still exists between the Council and RSL proposals. So you'll see from the table set out in the report that the award to be given to councils is lower than that set out for RSL partners. And that's, I understand, on the basis that the Scottish Government believe that it's cheaper for councils to borrow than it is for RSL partners. And my response to that, and I believe through COSLA, the response has been evidence to demonstrate that's not the case, and also to take on board the point that councils have a much wider remit than our RSL partners. So the Scottish Government have undertaken to, I believe, look at annual reviews. So as the projects move forward, they will look to review how that process has worked over the year that they will look back on. It's too early for us to establish what the pattern will be, but in the worked example that they provided in their draft guidance, they used exactly the same project for a council and for an RSL development, and one was taken through on a fast-track streamlined basis, which was the RSL project, and the other went through a more detailed technical appraisal, which was the council project, because its benchmark was lower and it therefore sat above the threshold benchmark level, so was subject to further detailed scrutiny. The potential impact of that is that it could slow down our programme in the event that that technical appraisal takes a longer period of time to take forward. As I say, at this stage it's early days, so we don't have sufficient data to be able to confirm the outcome of that, but it's worth noting that they've maintained the disparity between council and RSL grant investment levels. Hope that helps.
I agree with John's 100%. In fact, I get quite really annoyed just about it, and there has been a discussion at COSLA about it. But when you see as a local authority and what we tend to try and do, particularly our own local authority, we touch sites that other organisations will not go near, and that particularly has been really helpful in terms of some town centre regeneration. Some of our communities, we help people live within their own homes, which has got the benefit of helping hospital bed cases and keeping people healthy within the wellbeing objectives that we have. And now we're doing carbon zero. So the government will get a lot back for local authorities and for what they're putting in. And I think at least we should get parity with other RSLs in terms of what we do. I think that's only fair. So we'll continue to fight that point where we can. Debs.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely agree. I mean, the Scottish Government have set out in their guidance, well, the guidance isn't out yet, but they have set out in the draft guidance that there are add-ons, if you like. So there are measures that where a sum of money can be added on, as you mentioned, Chair, for achieving net zero. But it's also worth noting, as you've also pointed out, that we're not just looking to deliver boxes in a uniform way. We're looking to respond to needs, current and emerging need, and also to pick up on our need to satisfy demand across general and particular needs. And those don't necessarily sit within the confines that are set out within the proposed guidance. So absolutely one that we want to keep under review.
Thanks, Debs. Tom?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Debs, for the report. You know, a huge amount of work going on there, and going on into the future. It's absolutely great to see. And in terms of Bellevue Gardens, I'm pleased to see that that's going to be done on a net zero basis. We're just interested to know what sort of heating you're putting in there to achieve net zero, or whether it's being done mainly through the installation. That's one point. And the second point is about Brown Street in New Mills. My recollection that this has been an ongoing issue for a number of years now. I think we started off, we bought the site with 24 houses, and I think at that point there wasn't really any thought that SEPA were going to object to it. And then we've gone through all this work with SEPA over a number of years, reduced it to 16, and we're now still at a position that SEPA are not going to move any objection. So we've got an objection there. Maybe interesting to know just how much money we've spent on that site, and whether any approach has been made to the Scottish Government for us to retain the 180,000 that we got in good faith. We went ahead with this with good faith, with no thoughts of all the problems that we have with SEPA. And while we're on the subject of SEPA and town centre living, we've got the same problem when it arises in the town centre if we're trying to use any of the brownfield sites that we have and to get the town centre living. So I think there needs to be further discussion. And I know there's been some, but I think we need a further continuing discussion with SEPA to try and resolve some of these issues. Okay, Brown Street's maybe a fait accompli, but I think the town centre of Kilmarnock we need to do a lot more on to try and make sure that we can use some of these townfield sites for housing.
Thanks, Tom. Totally agree in terms of that dialogue need to have with SEPA. We need to continue to press home our concerns and look for some solutions there. But Debs, you want to comment?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Cook. In terms of the Bellevue Gardens, we're looking at introducing air source heat pumps by way of the heating system. And for your own information, as part of that introduction, there was actually a site visit carried out by colleagues from the Future Homes Project Board. A number of representatives went to visit a development, I believe it was a Maryhill Housing Association development, with partners from health and social care also going along, because there was some concern that these pumps might be noisy. So they actually went to listen to one in situ, just to be sure that we were confident that they would be satisfactory relative to their performance and any noise, particularly with regard to our health and social care partners' aspirations to develop assisted living models, because we're very mindful of the particular needs of our residents moving in there into these types of developments. And I'm pleased to confirm that it was a successful visit, and it did what it needed to do. It gave that reassurance. I hope that's of assistance. With regard to Brown Street, absolutely, the development's been going for a number of years, and as you note, it started out as something larger and has reduced down over the years. My colleagues are here from Facilities and Property Management and from Ayrshire Roads Alliance, and can probably better answer your queries relative to SEPA than myself. But I would just note that in terms of the Brown Street proposals, a significant amount of work has been done over the years to try and bring that development forward. However, because of the modelling that has been undertaken and the requirements by SEPA with regard to the impact of climate change modelling on the site, there's no way for us to mitigate that water across the site, and as such it can't be taken forward for development. With regard to costs, the 189 figure, or just under 189 figure that's set out in the report for return to Scottish Government, we will continue to talk to the Scottish Government about that. because I suppose in the wider aspect, you'll be aware that our Chief Executive is in dialogue with SEPA to talk about issues across East Ayrshire, where we have flood measures or flood issues, and it's a discussion that requires a more strategic approach to try to not only mitigate the impact of water, but also to consider what we can do to work with the water flow that we know is there, with regard to our ongoing regeneration across communities in East Ayrshire, whether it's in town centres, as you've mentioned in Kilmarnock, or if it's with regard to the Irvine Valley specifically, or right down to the individual sites at Brown Street. So that's something we want to take forward through innovative discussion and innovative measures working across services and external partners. And I think it needs that level of holistic approach to try to address. And I would suspect it's not just a problem that's specific to East Ayrshire. So that's something we would look to take forward anyway. And with regard to, as I say, with regard to the spend that we've already incurred at Brown Street, the grant subsidy that we've received from the Scottish Government, we'll continue to have dialogue with them in the event that something was to come forward. We would look to bring forward those discussions with the Scottish Government, but as no works are taking place at the moment, we are duty bound to return that grant subsidy at the moment.
Thanks, Debs. I think, in terms of that Brown Street site, I think we've went in there in good faith to try and reinvigorate a derelict site, and it's just a pity that we can't progress with plans, but I think that dialogue has to continue. And I know I visited the area with the wider New Mills area with the Chief Executive there a few weeks ago, and there's a big job needs to be done there, and we need all the support we can get from the government. Eddie?
Just simply to confirm, members, that myself with a range of the services met with the Chief Executive of SEPA on the 29th of October to discuss just exactly what Deb's is saying about that wider strategic approach to what we can do about flooding. It's not all about building flood barriers right in the middle of our towns. It's what we can do further upstream, in relation to that. And I've got to say it was a positive conversation we had with them, and that commitment to, have an ongoing conversation so we can take that forward.
Thanks, Eddie. That's quite reassuring, and we'll keep members up to date with that. Is that everyone? Yeah. Okay, if we can go to the recommendations, can we agree recommendations? Okay, thanks very much for that. Thanks, Debs. And on to our next paper, which is the Local Housing Strategy Annual Update. Chris.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The purpose of this report is to provide an annual update on the East Ayrshire Local Housing Strategy and the accompanying action plan. The strategy was approved in November 2019, but it's under constant review and an update is provided to Cabinet on an annual basis. The document is structured around the delivery of an overarching vision backed by 4 core outcomes, and a reminder of these is included in the annual update. An important part of the LHS annual review is highlighting the achievements over the last 12 months, and these are detailed in the report but are summarised as follows. Under Priority 1, Debs has already spoke about the innovative new build programme, but other highlights include continued support to the Gypsy traveller community throughout the pandemic and the ongoing achievements within the private rented sector, such as the Missing Share scheme and the Empty Homes programme. Priority 2 relates to housing options and homelessness. Achievements within this service are explained in the RRTP report that Helen will speak about, but we also have the development of a care leavers protocol and a large reduction in homeless presentations and an increase in tenancy sustainment. Priority 3 looks at supporting people to live independently in their own communities or community settings. And we have not only the ambitious assisted living programme, but the continued work of the adaptations programme and the care and repair service who assist people to stay in their existing properties. We also excitingly have been working in partnership with Alzheimer's Scotland, and we hope to roll out frontline dementia awareness training to all frontline staff in 2022. Priority 4 refers to housing quality, energy efficiency and fuel poverty. Gary's already spoke to you about that, and hopefully members can see where the various work streams fit into the LHS and the strategic vision. We also have the quality of homes in the private sector being improved through the scheme of assistance and HEAPS ABS, and working in partnership with Energy Advice, Citrus Energy and Citizens Advice to ensure that households within East Ayrshire have access to support in relation to energy advice and fuel poverty. Finally, our financial inclusion team and universal credit support team work tirelessly to maximise income of their clients. And it's worth actually mentioning the figures from April 2020 to March 21, over 37,000 one-off benefit income was generated for East Ayrshire residents by the Welfare Reform Advice Team. And in 2020-21, the East Ayrshire Money Team assisted with 1,788 referrals and resulted in over 158,000 in total financial gains. As well as highlighting the achievement, the LHS update also contains the LHS action plan, and there's an update on every action within there. Similar to the HAMF, it's a traffic light system that we use to measure progress there. And at this update, 89% of the actions are achieved on target or yet to commence. Only 11 are off target, and many of these actions have been impacted by the COVID-19 outbreak. As a comparison from last year, within the green status, the number of actions achieved has increased from 42 to 59. Amber actions have reduced to 18 from 31, and red actions to 9 from 13. This shows a really positive direction of travel in relation to the actions within the LHS and over the duration of the strategy. The action plan will continue to be monitored and amended to reflect changes to Scottish Government guidance in relation to COVID-19 and in line with local recovery and renewal priorities. We'll continue to work towards achieving the strategic vision and will report progress to Cabinet on an annual basis. And before I finish for questions, a brief apology. I was part of the Hampden Roan Monday night, and I think my voice is still recovering, so if I'm a wee bit hoarse or coughing or spluttering, that would be the reason. Happy to take questions.
You're the only one. But thanks for that. Jackie first.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't really got a question, Chris. I just wanted to say I thought that was great work. Reducing the red June to 9's brilliant. I'm very pleased about the way the local authority pursues equality and diversity. I think the Alzheimer training is great for frontline staff, and obviously, as we're going to speak about shortly, the Gypsy Traveller service as well. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Yeah, the Alzheimer's training really does seem quite interesting. I think it's maybe something we could all kind of that get contact with the public can really benefit from. Absolutely. Jim McMahon.
Thanks, Chair. And just following on that, my question was actually on that dementia training and how that will be delivered and who's going to be delivering it, Chris. But just one point I'd like to make, I know that standard that was set out for like 10% of our housing stock when we look at where it's accessible access to, but I'm aware that we have got one development going on. We're actually pushing that to the boundaries of 16%. So that's always encouraging to hear as well for my role as spokesperson for older people as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Other comments? Okay. Can we go to recommendations? Can we agree recommendations?
Chair.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Just on the question I asked Chris there, how that programme will be delivered on the Alzheimer programme, how it's going to be delivered.
All right. Certainly, Jim, I've got a wee more detail on the programme.
Through you, Chair, thank you for the comments and questions. We're working in partnership with Alzheimer's Scotland who provide that training. They have a training programme in place and we'll work together with them, and depending on the restrictions, it'll either be online or in person, and the staff will receive an Alzheimer's friend certificate afterwards. And happy to extend that training for members as well. Thank you.
Well, I think that'd be quite helpful. Thanks very much. Thanks, Chris. Yeah. Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Okay, that's great. And then item 6, the Gypsy Travel Service Provision. Chris again.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that in 2018, East Ayrshire Council made the decision to review local provision to Gypsy travellers communities. The review made it clear that the Council could be doing more to support the community, both residing in and passing through East Ayrshire, and steps were immediately made to address this. The Gypsy Traveller Integration and Engagement Officer was appointed in June 2019 on a temporary contract until 31st of March 2022 and has worked to foster change both locally and nationally. They've worked alongside COSLA and the Scottish Government to contribute to the development of the Improving the Lives of Gypsy Travellers 2019 to 21 Action Plan, the Coronavirus Framework to support Gypsy Travellers, and the forthcoming Gypsy Traveller Site Design Guide. Local achievements are also contained within the paper but summarised as follows. Accommodation was received from the CIH Scottish Housing Awards in February 2021 for the work we've undertaken in relation to Gypsy Travellers. A number of roadside encampments have been supported since the COVID-19 outbreak, with staff making regular welfare visits to encampments during the lockdown to ensure that all essential provisions were in place. We have a Gypsy Traveller Awareness Raising e-module that we've developed, and that's been rolled out, and to date over 600 staff and elected members have completed this training. Feedback on the training has also been very positive. This year we rolled out our second online celebration of Gypsy Traveller culture, and work took place between Housing Services, Communications and Equalities to devise this online celebration during Gypsy Traveller Awareness Raising Month. And finally, the Gypsy Traveller Steering Group has continued to meet online, and the purpose of this group is to encourage internal departments and community planning partners to develop a systematic approach to enhance services for Gypsy travellers. Despite these achievements, we have two large areas of work outstanding. These are the negotiated stopping pilot exercise and the local accommodation needs assessment. So we received Cabinet approval in December 2018 to work with COSLA and the Scottish Government to participate in this pilot, the negotiated stopping pilot, and that would take place over a 12-month period, and an assessment of the approach would be produced by COSLA at the end of the pilot. Unfortunately, the onset of COVID-19, COSLA's ability to project manage the pilot was affected. However, start-up meetings were reinitiated and an advisory group has now been re-established. COSLA released a revised timescale and they hope to have a final report ready by spring 2022. Cabinet also approved the development of a local accommodation needs assessment, and this was intended to build detailed local analysis incorporating consultation with local Gypsy traveller families to provide a current reflection of need within East Ayrshire. A review of both local and national data was conducted in 2019 and then updated in 2020. A questionnaire was developed in order to assess the level of demand for permanent and transit site provision. This consultation was scheduled to take place between April and September 2020, but we were unable to do that due to the COVID-19 outbreak. We considered alternative methods of consultation and developed an online survey, and this has been promoted through the Gypsy Traveller Integration and Engagement Officer and the Council's social media platforms. However, to date, only 10 responses have been recorded, and this is not a sufficient response to allow for accurate analysis of local need. In order to further progress the areas of work impacted by COVID-19 and conclude the two previous mentioned projects, it's proposed that the position of Gypsy Traveller Integration and Engagement Officer be extended for a period of 12 months until the 31st of March 2023. This additional 12 months would allow the opportunity to increase participation in the needs assessment, and it would also allow the findings of the negotiated stopping report to be analysed and that impact on any future management of encampments within East Ayrshire. Finally, in relation to the financial implications, members will recall that the Council's capital programme included an allocation of £300,000 for the provision of a Gypsy Traveller site. Approval was sought to withdraw £200,000 from this balance to cover the cost of service provision for a period of 3 years. Assuming no other expenditure, the remaining balance at the end of the 3-year period would be £105,000, and the financial implication of extending the post for 12 months would be £33,000. This would leave a remaining balance of £72,000, which would be sufficient to meet the cost of any temporary water and waste management costs associated with negotiated stopping. And we would then hope to update members in November 2022. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think with the disruption, I think that's a sensible kind of course of action to extend the post. The person's doing a really good job, as far as I can see. Any comments? Jackie?
I'm talking a lot. Aye. Yes, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say what you've already said, Finlay, and I've wanted to say that I would welcome and I totally support the proposed extension. I also wanted to extend my congratulations to the recognition of the work that's already been done. And then I wanted to blow my own trumpet and say that I've done the e-learning module and encourage all my colleagues to do the same because it's very insightful and well worth doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. You're the House of the spokesperson you're entitled to. So there you are. John?
Aye, thanks for that report. A lot of good work getting on. Just regarding paragraphs 28 to 31, it says been disappointed with only 10 responses being recorded to date. How many possible responses, or do we have a number of possible responses that we could have had, and what number of responses would allow us to make it meaningful consultation? Thank you.
Thanks, John. Chris?
Thanks for that question. We've acknowledged that the Gypsy traveller community, it's very difficult for us to engage with them for a variety of reasons, that they're transit in nature. There's been a kind of distrust of councils and agencies over a number of years, and it's very difficult to break that down. There's also been a lot of empty promises made to this community over the years, and they became a bit consultation shy. We don't have an actual figure in mind as to what we would hope to achieve. Certainly 10 we didn't feel was representative of that community across East Ayrshire. I'd personally be hoping for around 50, and I think with the limitations around these type of consultations, 50 would be an achievable number. We would hope to achieve that, and hopefully that would build a picture as to the existing need in East Ayrshire. Thank you.
John, you want back? Yeah.
No, thanks for that. So what are we doing to try and get the number up to 50? Thank you.
Hopefully the officer can now get more out and about in the local communities. We're working as part of the steering group as well. All members of the steering group have been asked if their staff are aware of any Gypsy traveller families to pass on Margot's details. We've working with national agencies as well, such as STEP, and we've asked if they're aware of any families within East Ayrshire to pass on Margot's details. Like I say, we were looking at actual, we're hoping to get out to more and more houses. We know anecdotally that a lot of Gypsy travellers stay in East Ayrshire, and it's just about getting the officer out and speaking to them and stressing the benefits of this consultation.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Claire, Maitland, Claire, Tom.
Thank you. I think it was actually Tom first, but just to follow on there for about the survey and how to get people to respond. And I understand 10 responses is pretty poor and we'll have to be more proactive, but I just wondered if there was any data sets, information from other councils that had carried out anything similar. Maybe we could tap into that for some information, and also to thoroughly support keeping the liaison officer in position. And I look forward to the report in May next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Tom?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and just on the issue of accommodation, I know we did an exercise a number of years ago, and I think it was kind of inconclusive about what we actually wanted. So more work we can do on that, the better to get a definitive answer. But I was just wanting to ask about the negotiated stopping place, how that has been going, if that's been a success, and whether we've had any discussions with private land owners on who have sites where we know that the gypsy travellers try to encamp, but they're not under our control. So I just wonder if we've had any discussion with them at all.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, members, for the questions. All local authorities are required as part of their housing need demand assessment to assess need within the gypsy traveller community. But it's very limited as to what information's there, and that's why we took the decision to do a standalone accommodation needs assessment. There is, that I know of, one other local authority that's conducted it, and we're working in partnership with them. We're working with the Site Managers Association as well to raise awareness of these type of things. So we are looking at existing data sets that are there and previous consultations that have been done. In relation to the negotiated stopping, we've had limitations into the services that we can provide for gypsy traveller families roadside in relation to negotiated stopping as it's done down south. And the reason for that is because a lot of our encampments are on private land. In fact, the majority of them are on privately owned land, and that limits us from putting in such things as toilet provision, that type of thing. The officer is in constant dialogue with landowners when an encampment arrives. We haven't had any that supported putting toilet provision in place. Although in those instances we have provided water and waste uplift so that they were in a safe, clean environment. So at this stage in time, we have adopted a negotiated stopping type approach in relation to service provision without the actual negotiations itself and the contract that we would look to put in place for good behaviour. But like I say, that's been out with our control because of where the traveller families choose to stop within East Ayrshire.
Thank you. Chair, sorry, just to continue, so we have a discussion with private landlords, private landowners about that.
Yes, absolutely. As soon as an encampment arrives, the Gypsy Traveller Integration and Engagement Officer will contact the landowner and they'll be in dialogue with them throughout the encampment stay.
That's fine, thanks. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, is that everyone? Okay, can we go to recommendations? Agree recommendations, okay, yeah. Okay, and the next item is the Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The purpose of the report is to provide an annual update on the Council's Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan Year 2 actions in 2020 to 21, with recommendations noted at paragraph 2. Members will be aware that a key homelessness and rough sleeping action group recommendation of 2017 was for a transition to a housing first and rapid rehousing approach, and all local authorities were required to develop and submit a Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan, or RRTP, to the Scottish Government as one solution to end homelessness in Scotland. Paragraphs 5 and 6 set out the funding received from the Scottish Government to implement the RRTP and to support the mitigation of homelessness through pandemic recovery. Paragraphs 8 to 10 discuss the submission of the RRTP funding and activity monitoring report and our updated action plan to the Scottish Government, which can be found at Appendices 1 and 2, with the focus on homelessness prevention and early intervention activities. Despite the impact of the pandemic, there were a number of key achievements in 2020 to 21. Paragraphs 11 through to 24 set out the homelessness context and demographic in East Ayrshire and the number of social housing lets to homeless households. We saw a decrease of 9% of homeless applications in the previous year, which may be due to the impact of the lockdown restrictions on households and the requirement for people to stay at home, as well as the targeted prevention work by the Housing Options team. Nearly 30% of households who presented to housing options in a crisis situation were able to remain in their accommodation, reflecting the robust casework of the team to help solve the housing problem. We regularly review the allocation of lets to the homeless group to ensure the priority allocation of social housing to statutory homeless households meets demand, and this ensures the quota remains appropriate to the needs of homeless households. Members, you'll recall the proposals contained within the RRTP approved by Cabinet in May 2019 to increase the allocation quota to the homeless group, subject to demand and in response to local pressures. And following Cabinet approval in November 2020, the quota of homeless lets in the Kilmarnock area was increased to 55% and resulted in a 12% increase of lets to homeless households in the previous year. The majority of applicants obtain a local authority tenancy. However, we've been able to signpost an increased number of households to the private rented sector, with 45 households moving to a private let, compared to 26 the previous year. This increase is due to the promotion of the private rented sector and confirms the benefits of utilising this sector to reduce homelessness. Repeat homelessness decreased by 86.5% of the previous year, with just 5 cases, equating to 0.8% of total homeless applications. Housing options officers conduct a thorough review of each case, and tenancy sustainment is a key action within the Housing Communities Service Improvement Action Plan. Following recent engagement with the Scottish Housing Regulator, we were assured of our commitment to assisting people experiencing homelessness throughout the pandemic. Our temporary accommodation provision, our actions to mitigate the time households spend in temporary accommodation, and the fluidity of our common allocations policy in responding to demand and need. Paragraphs 25 through to 36 discuss our temporary accommodation portfolio and the slight decrease in demand from the previous year. However, due to the initial suspension on allocations, the restrictions on work carried out within void properties, and the ongoing issues of the availability of materials, households are spending longer in temporary accommodation. Our target to reduce the time households spend in temporary accommodation and the number of properties within our portfolio faces challenges. At the onset of the pandemic, all homeless applicants within St Andrew's Court Hostel were relocated to temporary furnished accommodation across East Ayrshire. Subsequently, due to the forthcoming unsuitable accommodation order, a review of all temporary accommodation was undertaken, and refurbishment of the hostel is due to be completed early next year. Thereafter, a rapid access model of accommodation will be delivered, whereby service users can access essential support across services during a very short stay before transitioning to their own settled accommodation. In order to progress the homelessness agenda post-pandemic and seek to reduce demand for temporary accommodation, the Safest Houses Group was established under the umbrella of the wider wellbeing agenda to ensure that the prevention of homelessness remains a central focus for action and activity across services, partners and communities. Housing options officers undertake comprehensive case reviews, and all properties allocated to homeless households are prioritised for void works to ensure a speedy turnover of temporary accommodation and minimise the disruption to households. Paragraphs 37 through to 63 describe the wide range of housing options activities, with the principles of early intervention and prevention aligning with the Council's fairer, kinder and connected themes. Our homelessness prevention activities focus on building on the robust relationship with our community partners in the Health and Social Care Partnership, education and the third sector. Actions include proactive outreach to vulnerable groups to reduce homelessness demand and identifying priority support requirements for children and young people, people experiencing domestic abuse and people with problematic drug and alcohol use. We see positive results in tenancy sustainment, and the percentage of people sustaining their tenancy beyond 12 months in East Ayrshire has continued to increase over the last 4 years. Overall, tenancy sustainment in East Ayrshire in 2020 to 21 was 85.9%, an increase of 4% on the previous year. And the percentage of people who were housed via the homeless group and have remained in their home was 77.2%, an increase of 2.7% in the previous year. We've seen an ongoing reduction in evictions in recent years, and there were no evictions carried out in 2020 to 21 due to the introduction of coronavirus legislation, new tenancy procedures, and embedding the neighbourhood coaching approach. We are promoting the new tenant grant fund across the social and private rented sectors and access to a range of financial assistance schemes across all landlords to assist households who are at risk of homelessness due to the pandemic, to prevent costly court action and people losing their homes. Housing services have a significant role to play in protecting the well-being of children and young people throughout East Ayrshire. For families seeking homeless persons assistance and emergency accommodation, childhood experiences of homelessness can often lead to homelessness in later life, with homelessness recognised as an adverse childhood experience. The Child Wellbeing Protocol was launched in October 2020 in collaboration with the Health and Social Care Partnership and Education to prevent homelessness and mitigate transitions and trauma for children, young people and families. This has enhanced joint working to mitigate homelessness and tackle financial problems within households. Paragraphs 64 to 68 detail the progress made in implementing Housing First in East Ayrshire. The Council's approach to Housing First includes accessible housing options advice, robust partnership working, and flexible wraparound trauma-informed housing support. Approximately 25% of homeless applicants cited more than one unmet support need during their homeless interview, and 13% of applicants presented with a drug and/or alcohol dependency. In East Ayrshire in 2020, there were 36 drug-related deaths, and despite this being a decrease of 5 in the previous year, with males aged 35 to 44 the biggest group affected, this informs the need for Housing First to help our most vulnerable tenants. Housing First tenants are signposted via the Health and Homelessness Nurse Service and through the continuing open referral system for NHS addiction services to ensure the provision of health and wellbeing advice and an enhanced referral pathway for those with multiple or complex needs, utilising the new radar service if required. Housing First commenced in East Ayrshire in August this year, with the implementation of 5 tenancies planned by the end of the financial year. Paragraphs 69 to 71 describe the additional lets to the homeless group as a result of tenants moving to new build properties, with a target of 70% of resultant voids allocated to homeless applicants remaining. Paragraphs 72 through to 79 discuss a multi-agency response to the Shore standards, working in partnership to improve the preparation and support for those in and leaving custody, and the range of supports provided to those in prison as they plan for liberation. Members, you'll note the progress of the neighbourhood coaching programme detailed within paragraphs 80 to 82, with the aim of supporting, encouraging and enabling our tenants to manage their home through building trusting relationships with our colleagues. Paragraphs 83 and 84 provide an update on procuring the web-based outcomes monitoring tool, Better Futures, which will enhance the continuity of support to our tenants and reduce duplication across services, putting the tenant at the core of their own support journey. Paragraphs 85 to 92 discuss the homelessness context in East Ayrshire from the private rented sector and the portfolio of the Council's private sector housing unit, with all activities seeking to promote the sector, increase the number of private rented properties, reduce the number of empty homes across the local authority, and bring more affordable and accessible housing options to East Ayrshire. We acknowledge the importance of being responsive to local need and the role our communities play in our journey through recovery of the pandemic, to a local authority which seeks to serve our tenants and residents alongside our community partners, as we seek to fulfil the vision and principles of the Housing to 2040 National Strategy. There are no legal, risk, policy, HR or equality implications arising from this report. Should future funding allocated by the Scottish Government not meet the total sum requested, proposed actions contained within the RRTP will require to be reviewed and prioritised. All other implications are noted in paragraphs 97 through to 100. Our overall strategy to end homelessness aims to tackle current health, wellbeing and other inequalities. Future RRTP actions seek to further explore the private rented sector as an affordable housing tenure, the expansion of Housing First, youth homelessness prevention work, and embedded referral pathways with partners for tenants and households at risk of homelessness, trauma and poverty. To conclude, the planned activities within the RRTP draw upon the expertise and common goals of our community partners, and the action plan was updated this year to meet the recommendations of HARSAG and has been produced in accordance with Scottish Government guidance. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Helen. A lot of work there. I think a lot of our efforts in sustainability, we said right at the start, are due to this work here. Repeat homeless claims, only 5 cases in the whole East Ayrshire. That is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. But no, were challenges. I think we've done the right thing closing St Andrew's Hostel for refurbishment. I was doing that neck of the woods earlier in the week, and to be quite honest, we've got our work cut out because you know, it does look a wee bit bleak house down there, and you know, these people are suffering trauma. You know, many of these folk want to house them in a, you know, even temporarily in a secure and safe place where they feel safe and secure. So I think that's really important, and I know that we can plan for that. We have every faith that we'll be able to get some in terms of the design for that, but I think it's going to be key for members, and it's maybe something we want to bring back to members before, you know, once we've got kind of definite plans in sight. I think that'd be really helpful. Okay, just bring in some other folk now. Claire's first, and then Jackie Todd.
I'd like to thank Helen for the report and on the progress report. But what I really want to do is to say thank you. You have helped me out with so many families and so many people since lockdown to prevent these people going homeless. I understand the temporary accommodation isn't completely satisfactory for everyone, but heartfelt thanks. There are people behind these stories here, and I just want to say thank you, Helen, for your personal intervention on several occasions.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, Councillor.
Jackie.
Thank you. Yeah, I echo the same sentiment, Helen. Absolutely amazing work for everybody in the team. You've all done great. Clearly, innovative ideas and teamwork and a holistic approach is paying off. I think there's a lot to be commended for. I note the decrease in the temp accommodation numbers. I also noted what you're saying about the increase in tenancy sustainment, in particular by those from the homeless group. So those are really good. I'm delighted about the child and wellbeing protocol being launched. It's all great. What I wanted to ask though was, can you expand a wee bit on what you think the Housing First approach will bring to East Ayrshire, please?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Todd. For the tenants that we have approaching housing options who'll benefit from the intensive wraparound support that we can provide, it's really focusing on the early conversations where we can establish the accommodation that meets the needs of the tenant around the support needs that they have. But it's about these key conversations with colleagues to really build a relationship similar to the neighbourhood coaching approach, but to build trust and to identify what support needs they may be. So we have really swift referral pathways in place through the Health and Homelessness Nurse Service, and also with the level of support that we can provide our Housing First tenants, we can progress early around their support requirements, which could be around benefits, rent, homemaking, as well as helping them on their recovery journey. So we really hope that our Housing First approach meets the tenants' health and wellbeing needs, but also their wider aspirations to be able to maintain a home, be able to manage their money, but also achieve their own aspirations, whether that's through employment, training, education, etc. So they're really the main benefits that we see for East Ayrshire, but more importantly for our tenants within the Housing First service.
Thanks, Helen. It's appreciated. John?
I thanks for that report, Helen. We're getting near the end of the papers now, but this is not any less important. Just a question on paragraph 47. It states that it is acknowledged that homelessness could have been prevented in the majority of cases had the local authority became aware of issues before it reached crisis point. Just for my knowledge, what would somebody at 16 and 17 be expected today to make sure that the council was aware of that? And the other question was just to do with paragraph 66. I was just trying to look at the figures. There's some of the figures, 98.8%, should have a percentage in there, just so I have a better understanding of the figures. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Helen.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Just to answer your first question, absolutely. Young people, it might not be their first thought around homelessness or permanent housing in the future. So our colleagues in Housing Options are working with education to devise a package of support to go into schools and talk about homelessness and housing and what it means for young people and also what it means with their future decisions. So we're hoping just to do some further work around that and about raising awareness of what homelessness means and how it can impact further on in life. I hope that answers your question. Moving on to your second point about paragraph 66. I think, no, it's not a percentage that's missing, it's just 98.8. It's just the way that the statistic reads per 1,000 of the population. So it's purely just the way that the statistic's written. And that's from an annual report, a national annual report that's provided. Thank you.
Okay, no other comments. Thanks, Helen, for that report. And can we agree the recommendations? Okay, and on to, I think, our final report. And factoring services proposed changes. Gary.
Thanks, Chair. The recommendations of the report are set out in paragraph 1. As highlighted in points 9 to 13, an audit of the factoring service was carried out during 2021 as part of internal audits programme, and this found that the current procedures incorporated effective controls which were consistently applied. So the audit also confirmed that the arrangements in place support the Council's policy and objectives with regard to factoring. The audit considered these to be notable achievements, particularly given the challenging circumstances of the pandemic. And I mentioned Jim New earlier, but he deserves great credit for this area of the business. As part of the audit, the following actions were agreed. We would bring a report to Cabinet detailing proposed increases in charges for 22-23, with the recommendation that fees are reviewed and then presented annually. The service will also liaise with finance colleagues to ensure that factoring fees are included in the annual corporate fees and charges exercise, which form part of the revenue budget setting. Performance information relating to factoring service will also be submitted to members on an annual basis, and that the Property Factor Scotland Act 2011 is incorporated properly into the Council scheme of delegation and administration at the next scheme revision. So paragraph 14 highlights that the management fee for the provision of the factoring service to homeowners hasn't increased since the service was established in 2013. And paragraph 16 proposes that the fee for factoring management for 22-23 increases by 10.99%, which will take it from £63.59 excluding VAT to £70.58 excluding VAT per year, and that would be reviewed annually thereafter. It's recognised that even with this increase, the factoring management fee is still significantly lower than that of other councils. The Homeowners Maintenance Plan, which is in Appendix 1, was introduced to help owners with regard to repairs associated with communal doors and entry lighting systems, and the charges for this haven't been reviewed since 2016. The The cost charged for this service result in the council making a small loss each year, but it's acknowledged that this shortfall is partially offset by the resource that would be required to deal with the high level of inquiries that could be received if the plan were not available. So given this, paragraph 424 proposes to increase the annual fee for the maintenance plan from £12 per year excluding VAT to £15 per year excluding VAT per owner. This proposed change will reduce the deficit but also takes account of the current pandemic and economic climate. Again, it's recommended that thereafter these charges are reviewed annually. And paragraph 26 highlights that the Property Factors Scotland Act 2011 wasn't cited in the council scheme of delegation, but this has now been addressed and is being dealt with as appropriate with legal colleagues. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Any questions, Tom?
Thanks, Chair. No, I just wanted to comment on the homeowners maintenance plan. You see, we've got 108 people signed up to that. I don't know what the maximum number we could get, if there is a figure of how many potential homeowners we have in blocks that could apply to. And I think you're right in relation to the cost of this. Whilst we are making a loss on paper, when you look at the backroom costs of issuing an invoice to somebody for replacing a light bulb in the common course, which we now don't have to do if that's in place, then I think we can see overall that there's a cost efficiency in that plan. But I'd just be interested to see what the numbers are, what the uptake or what potential uptake it could have, and how we're promoting that to the homeowners.
Okay, thanks. Through yourself, Chair. We've got 2,059 properties in mixed tenure, and of those 765 are privately owned. Ideally, Councillor Cook, they would all take the maintenance plan, and we'd be delighted if they did so, because it would streamline the process and it would make it straightforward for everyone. So there's no upper limit on it. We would encourage, and we do encourage through the annual newsletters that go out, owners to take this plan, because it's a win for them, and it's definitely a win for ourselves. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for that, Gary. Okay, Tom, that's fine. Anyone else? Okay, can we just go to recommendations? Agree recommendations? Okay, thanks very much, everybody, and thanks for the Housing Cabinet. Thank you. Good set of papers there, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair.